about 54% of Liberians live on less than $2 a day. My entire philosophy on doing business is to empower people, to provide opportunities for people to earn money.
I am from Rwanda. My whole skin would just come off easily. I thought I was about to die. I'm turning 18, right? Perfect time to die, but I didn't die.
I want to start my project before someone else gets the idea. A central hub that works online, because we were the first to do so.
Everywhere in the world, entrepreneurs are the same. They have a hope, they have dreams, they're never afraid of something they want to create. Entrepreneurs, I think we should make them the heroes.
Welcome to Africa's Business Hero Show.
Last century, the bigger the better. This century, business, the smaller the better.
I want any people that are in Africa or anywhere else in the world to believe that they can make money thanks to African culture.
Our goal is to go after 10 million farmers in Africa, and we're going to get Africa to feed ourselves and the world.
Small is nothing wrong.
And I live for the day that every African child can access water in their homes.
Each one of you give me one advice that I will mark it by heart and I will remember it for 10 years.
They can start their dream, they can start their journey and change the continent.
This is the first time we have this program, and we will continue to do it.
This is how I want to do. This is my own passion.
Perfect. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining. Welcome to the ANPI Africa's Business Heroes webinar series. My name is Zahar Beti, and I'm the Partnership and Programs Manager at the African Netpreneur Prize Initiative, or ANPI for short. ANPI is the Jack Ma Foundation's flagship philanthropic entrepreneur program in Africa. And every year we organize the Africa Business Heroes competition and show, which aims to identify and spotlight 10 top African entrepreneurs who are making an impact in their local communities and building a better and more inclusive future. And hopefully from the video, some of our key values are clear. We're an initiative that is looking for not just profitable businesses, but importantly for entrepreneurs who are using business to create social impact. We're looking for courageous, bold, innovative, and creative individuals. And so it's very fitting that today, the webinar that we are co-hosting with Ashesi is titled The Hybrid Entrepreneur. This webinar is part of a series, the Africa's Business Heroes webinar series, which aims to provide entrepreneurs with skills building opportunities and also opportunities to learn more about the Africa Business Heroes competition and learn how to apply so that you have the opportunity to win a share of $1.5 million, access to training and mentorship. For us, it's clear that the world is rapidly changing, as everyone on this call can definitely attest to, and things are no longer going to be business as usual. And we think that it's important for us to respond to this. And this webinar is very timely because during this crisis and afterwards, there will definitely be large needs that we think entrepreneurs are going to be able to address and can do so by adopting hybrid business models that not only look at creating profit, but also addressing problems in our society and creating social impact. And so I'm particularly excited that we're able to kick off this series with Ashesi and have Dr. Gordon Ajoma lead this session and provide insights on how entrepreneurs can leverage their business to create change in their communities and navigate these trying times. So with that, I will turn it to Dr. Gordon Ajoma, who is an Associate Professor of Entrepreneurship and Innovation at Ashesi. Dr. G, over to you.
Delay. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Zara, for that wonderful intro. I'm very excited to be part of this program. We at Ashesi see ourselves as one of the leaders in entrepreneurship education. So we are excited that the ANPI program is partnering with us as an education partner, and we're excited to share some of the programs and projects and a way of thinking about entrepreneurship with the audience. All right, so we chose to share one of the concepts we've been working on. As Sarah mentioned, I teach at Ashesi, but I also lead a program called the Next Eye to Eye program that we have with MIT from Cambridge, Massachusetts, and supported by USAID. And what we're trying to do in this program is to build a one-year incubator for enterprising students graduating from Ashesi. Now, a quick thing to note is that at Ashesi, we have a one-year compulsory entrepreneurship course for all of our freshmen. And our mission is to educate ethical entrepreneurial leaders. So it is important that we have that much focus on entrepreneurship, and that we are very intentional about how we teach entrepreneurship. And so we have that one-year compulsory course for all freshmen, but it doesn't matter what your major is. And then we have other programs, curricular and extracurricular, after the 1 year. And now we have another one year post-graduation program for all freshmen. Not for all freshmen, post-graduation program for enterprising students that want to explore entrepreneurship once they graduate, want to explore entrepreneurship as an alternative career option. And we think this closes the loop, if you will, very nicely on our mission. And so we have a number of programming elements in this in the incubator, and one of them is this concept of hybrid entrepreneurship. So I'm basically going to walk you through some of the thinking that we take our entrepreneurs through as to how they can develop businesses that fit the mission that we set out, and also that are in sync with where the world is going today, if you want. So for the webinar today, we'll be focused, so that was the introduction, and then we'll introduce the concept of the hybrid spectrum, and then we'll use the BCorp concept as an illustration, and then we'll talk about how you can apply this hybrid concept in a situation like this, in this COVID era, with all the restrictions and with all the limitations that we're going to see, even when the virus is contained. And then, of course, we'll end with benefits of the hybrid model. Supporting, we're helping and trying to alert entrepreneurs to not be pure for-profit or pure non-profit, but come to the middle. If you think of pure for-profit, pure non-profit as two ends of the spectrum, right? That you move a little bit to the middle. And for pure for-profit, it is the concept of starting to include some social impact. And this could look like doing CSR projects, being socially minded, and all the way to the middle. Okay, the sound, okay, all right. I think we're back with the visual, and the sound is also okay, right?
Yes, all good now.
Wonderful, thank you so much. Our viewers and audience, apologies for that. This technology again. So I was saying that the concept of hybrid is moving towards the middle, and it doesn't mean that you should not be a for-profit, or what we're saying is that you start to incorporate some social impact. And we've seen this with for-profits on the right who move towards socially responsible businesses, and we've seen this with typical non-profits on the very left who move towards social enterprises in the middle. And so this is sort of the concept that we try to put into the minds of our entrepreneurs when they start out, to find ways in which they can be more hybrid. We can move to the next slide. And Alex Osterwalder, who developed the business model canvas, which we are going to look at in a little bit. captured this really well in this 2x2 matrix. So y-axis being profit potential, x-axis being social impact potential. So this idea that old school corporations played on the left for profit and little social impact, old school non-profits played on the bottom right, social impact, but not as much looking at how to be sustainable. But new school conscientious entrepreneurs play in this top right space, right? New school conscientious entrepreneurs. This idea, conscientious means you are focused on doing the right thing. This idea that new entrepreneurs think that doing the right thing is focusing both on profit and social impact. I think it's a very powerful point to keep in mind. Next. So what does it mean to be hybrid? This is where sometimes we get a little bit of resistance. So people say, well, I hire people and I have employees and I pay them salary. And, you know, and I say this, you know, with a lot of humor, that yes, that's true, but the fact is that criminal organizations also hire people and pay them salaries, right? And which they used to look after their families. So it's not about doing the barest minimum. And then others who say, well, I do CSR projects. In December, I go out and, you know, I do immunizations, clean gutters, paint hospitals. Yes, that is great. There's nothing wrong with that. But what we're talking about is this concept of building, you know, that happens in December. What we're talking about is this concept of building social value and commercial revenue through a single unified strategy. Not very easy to do, but the idea of building social value and commercial value through a single unified strategy. When you look at your business model, you can see commercial revenue in there. You can see social revenue, social value in there. And that's what we're talking about when we talk about hybrid. And so you right off the bat, you realize that this is something that's going to be difficult for a lot of companies to be able to implement. But of course, there are others doing it so we can learn from. Next. So if you will, the poster child when you know, the Harvard Business Reviews and the social enterprise, social return organization and academics talk about the perfect model for hybrid organization. They point to this organization that is in New York, right? And they, hot bread kitchen is what it's called. And so they give the imagery that if you think of hot bread kitchen, you would think they are in two different businesses. They have a school that trains women from all over the world. If you look at this picture, you see women from all over the world. But they also have a very profitable business of selling all kinds of bread. Now look at what's interesting about this. If you put women from all over the world and you give them good training in baking, what happens is that they bring their ethnic tastes and ways of baking into the business, and you get all kinds of wonderful types of bread, right? So the point here is that you can indeed build a model that has the social impact embedded in your profit model as a single unified strategy. Next. So just before I go, I have a few other examples, but just before I go on, I just want to point you to what we will normally describe as social impact models, right? So definitely in the hot bread example, it was the third one, employment, right? But there are all these models: employment, entrepreneur support, market intermediary, employment, fee for service. That's when you break down your the different elements so that people can afford it. Thinking of low-income clients, thinking of maybe the same version of what you have, or maybe a different version for low-income clients. Forming cooperatives to organize your supply chain, being a market linkage, doing service subsidization, organizational support, and so forth. And you can sort of maybe take a picture and Google some of these. But the point I want to make here is that there are so many angles through which you can build these social impact models into your for-profit model. And I keep mentioning building social impact into for-profit models because the fact is that it's a lot easier to do it the other way around. What's harder to do is to build social impact into for-profit. So I'm going to use that a lot in my examples. Next. The other entity that is often known for hybrid is Ben & Jerry's, an ice cream organic company in the US. And they are also at the forefront of this BCorp movement that we're going to look at as an illustration. Next slide. And they say here that being social is good for business, right? It shows it's good business. Next.
Please let me know when you want to show the video.
Okay. All right. So just a quick note here from Rob Michalek when he talks about, and I'll come back to BCorp when he talks about what BCorp did for them. He said that the B impact assessment added a new twist to our incentives. It helped us understand where we are in comparison to other companies, right? So basically the idea here is that it gives them a competitive advantage over competitors. Next. So I want us to reflect a little bit on what Ben & Jerry says that the concept of social, what it means to them, right? So Ben & Jerry says that Ben & Jerry's has always believed in linked prosperity. I want you to take note of the phrase, linked prosperity, that all stakeholders connected to our business should prosper as we do, from those who produce the ingredients, to employees who make the product, to communities in which the company operates. I want you to reflect a little bit on that. When you think of entrepreneurship, entrepreneurial business, when you think of starting a business, do you think about linked prosperity? The idea that stakeholders, not just your customers, stakeholders connected to your business should prosper as you prosper, right? That including those who you source from, the employees who work on the product, and the community, the immediate community around you. Such a powerful statement. I want you to reflect on that and think about that as one of the hallmarks of the concept of being hybrid. Next. Eben, next. Yeah, so reflect on that. So a few more examples. This is from JPalm, which I think I was on the video at the beginning. It's one of the top 10 from the Net Prize, the Net Entrepreneur Prize program last year in Liberia, and they are focused on using kernel to develop wonderful products, and they have you should check out their website, wonderful products. Skin care, hair care. There's even one for beard care, which I got very interested in. I'm gonna contact them about that. But you also see that even though they are a commercial entity, they also support a lot of the people they source from, right? Supporting 500 smallholder suppliers working in 5 counties, providing a lot of jobs. Next. And there's this one from Ghana, Kwame Williams, in a similar business, working mostly on the moringa value chain. So they talk about having 2,500 smallholder farmers engaged, right? Returning almost $500,000 in income to these farming communities. But check this out, planting 300,000 trees, right? This is a commercial entity. It has commercial profits strongly embedded in its model in the product you see on the left, but it does so by empowering people on the ground as well. Another example, next. This is another one of the entrepreneurs that we are connected with, Kawamoka, Amy Beth, who's also an Ashesi alum, adopted a village in the Volta region where she sources her products from. Now, you would think, well, all of these examples have supply chain sort of focus on supply chain. But there's so many other companies, and we'll see in the BCorp model that are not in supply chain at all. In fact, one of the companies Growth Mosaic here in Ghana, which provides financial services, funding support to entrepreneurs. What they do actually is that they defer consulting fees, right, until investment is acquired, because they know that SMEs cannot afford the kind of fees that is needed to bring in the investment, and they are one of two, I think, BCorp companies in Ghana. So it's not just companies that have agricultural sourcing as their model. Next. So let's come back to this concept of unifying, a single unifying strategy. If you're an entrepreneur, what does it mean for you? What is this single unifying strategy? Can you start to see it? This model where you are not doing well and then doing good, but you are doing good whilst doing well. Next. And as you think about that, I also want you to think about back to the spectrum. Where will you place your organization on the spectrum as you think about this single unified strategy? Where would you place it? What we're saying is you don't have to come all the way to the middle, but we hope that you're not staying on the extreme ends either, that you're thinking of ways of moving towards the middle, even if you don't come all the way. So we have a little poll for you. Very quickly, if you can, on your screen, whether you're on the laptop or on your phone, you will see a poll pop up. That's our own way of making sure that you are still with us. So when you think about this spectrum and you think about the business that you have or the one that you're thinking about, where will you put yourself? So we want you to click on the poll and hit submit, and then Eben will display the results in a little bit. So let's start to talk about how. How could you achieve this single unifying strategy? It's very difficult, right? So let's start with the business model canvas. If you're not familiar with the business model canvas, it is a one, if you will, slide. Think of it as a canvas on which you draw your whole business. It has 9 blocks and it's in 2 parts. So you take the value proposition in the middle, and you have the revenue streams on the right, and then you have cost structure on the left. Okay, so think of the value proposition you have. You've been thinking of the one you're working on. The value proposition is targeted to a certain group of customers, customer segments, and you reach them through a set of channels, and you establish these customer relationships with them to get repeat business, right? So if you're a bank, you have your customer relationship in a bank card. Okay, so I was talking about, and Eben, let me know if it's breaking.
It's perfect.
I was talking about it's perfect? Okay, good. I was talking about the business model canvas as a way of helping us start to explore this unifying strategy. And I was saying that you can think of the business model canvas as in 9 blocks, value proposition in the middle, and then the right side gives us revenue streams, and the left side gives us cost structure. So you have a value proposition in the middle targeted at customer segments on the right. You reach them through channels. You have a customer relationship that helps you make sense of how to continue to engage with them. And you have, from these value propositions targeted at customer segments, you have a revenue stream. But it costs you money to do that. And you have key activities on the left that help you provide this value proposition to customers. And then you have key resources that help you with the key activities and key partners that you bring on board in order to provide the value proposition. And all of those things result in a cost structure. So at the end of the day, you can compare your cost structure to your revenue stream. Next. So we're going to look at what it means to start building in social value into this. So remember the social enterprise models that I showed you? So if you want to do employment, market intermediary, and so forth, how can you start building these into your for-profit model. Next. So I want to do a quick detour to B Corp to look at some of the other factors that we can use there. So B Corp basically was put up by this a nonprofit called B Labs, and they were basically, the idea was to help companies intentionally build social impact into their model, just as we're talking about now. And they went as far as to promote legislation that then allows companies to be able to register as benefit corps now in the US, and I think in a few other countries. And so these are companies that take on this B Corp designation and are intentional about building social value into their models.
We have a dream that one day all companies will compete not only to be the best in the world, but the best for the world. Others share this dream and have begun to turn the dream into a community. This community signed a declaration of interdependence and invited others to join them. Now more than 900 companies from 29 countries are turning our community into a global movement to redefine success in business. B corporations use the power of business to solve social and environmental problems. An eyewear company that disrupts an industry and serves the poor. A food service company that serves over 1 million meals to low-income public school students every week. A manufacturer that goes green and helps workers move from welfare to a career. An online bookseller that recycles used books and funds local libraries and global literacy. An outdoor apparel company that stewards the environment. An ice cream company that maintains its mission post-sale. B Corp is a certification that helps consumers identify these changemakers, and investors make money and make a difference. As a community, we are passing laws across the country, creating a new kind of company that serves society and shareholders. We are leading a global movement of people using business as a force for good. Join us. Be the change.
So you see the concept of hybrid, and you can see the companies that are espousing this and also benefiting from it as well. So we can go on to the next. Okay, so here are the elements, the B Corp assessment factors that are often used to evaluate these companies. And as you can see on the screen, they are in five main areas. So it's governance, workers, community, environment, and impact. Impact business models. So there's a sort of an assessment system that enables these companies to get a score, and that tells them the extent to which they are sort of standing in the B Corp space. Next. So it's the question of how do you take these concepts and including the earlier ones onto your business model canvas. So we can go to next. Okay, so if you take the impact models, you can see that when it comes to how you make direct impact on products, in terms of green products, organic products, and so forth, you can see how that could be. You look at your your value proposition, you look at the customer segments, and you can start to sort of connect the dots there, targeting underserved communities in terms of sourcing and so forth, and also making cheaper products or cheaper versions of your products to lower income customers, and also thinking of ways of impacting your supply chain. Next. And then workers, you can find workers in key resources, right? In terms of the concepts of job growth, compensation and benefits, employment practices, work environment, employee ownership. Some of the companies provide ownership to employees to improve the working conditions and their affinity to the company. Next. And of course, in terms of community, you have suppliers. You're looking at being local. You're looking at diversity among the people you work with. You're looking at the impact, the extent to which you and employees do charity, and so forth. Next. So this is the community of BCorp companies. And as you can see, the growth mosaic from Ghana is on the very left. They are not all sort of agricultural-based companies. Ice cream company, there's Etsy, which is a platform for selling artisan products. Patagonia on the right, which sells mostly apparel for exercise and so forth. In Africa, we have about 26 plus certified B Corps. In Ghana, I think about 2, and then globally about 2,655. So if you are interested in sort of being guided by the B Corp concept, you can check it out. Next. Right. So I wanted to sort of take those concepts and then take it to COVID-related space, and then go back to the business model canvas and see what are some of the practical things businesses can do, entrepreneurs can do in this kind of era. So what are some of the things we know about the condition we're in, right? We know that when the virus is contained, not all employees are going to be rehired, at least not immediately, right? Customers are playing it safe. People are saving their money, keeping their money. Customers who have are playing it safe. Those who don't have definitely need support, right? Sourcing, if you're sourcing from specific areas, all of those sourcing locations are fractured. You've seen pictures of potatoes and onions being buried because there's no market for them. Supply chains have been disrupted globally. Value chains have been broken. Intermediaries are not working well. So there are going to be a lot of people out of business, and it's going to be the question of how do the business leaders, and it's not just, so the framing we had for this talk was, it's not just the government that can do something for people in this space, but entrepreneurs can as well. So given this idea of social impact and looking at building social impact into our for-profit businesses, how can we be motivated by the conditions, these dire conditions of COVID and what it leaves behind, to start to implement some of these elements into our model? Next. So if you go back to the business model canvas and you say, let's start from value proposition, right? What can entrepreneurs do today? So we're thinking of things you can do at no cost to you, right? And customers, if you can provide services at lower cost or for free. There are a lot of companies who have, if you have a platform, for instance, there's very little marginal cost to extending that platform to more customers, right? So I like New York Times, but I can never afford it. But now I can read New York Times, especially when it comes to COVID-related news, because those ones are for free, right? There are also elements where there's productive use kinds of products where you provide assets to others to be able to build on. So platforms, for instance, where people can use to sell online, or even unused assets that you have that you can invite specific people groups to come and benefit from. Next. And then, of course, there's a never-ending number of partners who want to help. You've seen all of those ads, which are, this challenge, that challenge, this competition, that competition. There are so many grants available now. Now, one thing to note is that when you think of your customer segment, there is always a development agency or an organization that is also interested in your customer segment, right? So if you do education, there is a development agency that's promoting education. If you work in the agro value chain, there's a development agency that's interested in safe practices, in livelihoods, and so forth. This is the time to partner with development agencies with funding, with support, so that you can create new value propositions with these new partners to provide to the customer segments that you already have, right? Next. And then, of course, if you look at key activities, we talk a lot about being automated, going to automation and so forth. But perhaps this is a time to maybe bring in a few more people into our processes, right? Perhaps you can hire engineers to be quality assurance managers on your production line, right? Even though you have AI and all of those things. So how do you bring in more humans to support them, especially if it doesn't cost you money? Employee flexibility, we've tested the model of working from home. It is very clear now that some employees may have to work from home when the virus is contained, because companies have realized, oh, maybe we can do this. So how do we maybe explore that a little bit more? How do you find opportunities for your workers to get bonus pay, right? Things they can do in addition to the work they already do, so that they can get more money. Next. And if you have channels, for instance, you have supply chain channels, you have distribution channels. This is a time to perhaps provide things like training, business training, that you can provide to distribution channels. Maybe safety training for motorbike, your motorbike company that you use for distributing. Maybe support for the canteen that provides food for you at your factory, right? Because if you're not able to support them, then the impact of the situation is going to be there, and it's going to affect your business as well. So how can you go the extra mile to provide some support for people in your channels? And customer relationships, you can create and also propagate COVID-related content to help people, right? You have marketing people, you have creatives, you have developers. Can you create some awareness material that can then support people in being able to reduce the rate of infection? Next. So, I mean, we can do the poll here, or maybe forget about it. But the other point to note is that you also have to be a little careful. So we're not saying jump into social impact. This diagram is extremely important, because what it does is that it helps you think about aligning specific elements or one-to-one mapping of the different elements of your business model, right? So if you have a new value proposition, there's probably an activity that you need to provide to enable that value proposition. Don't miss that, right? Or don't add that to the work of the marketing people. If you have a new partner that is bringing in grants, don't add all of the work in reporting to the other departments. Hire new people to do grant management and grant support, because the funder is going to be expecting this. So those are different ways of making sure that you capture the planning well, and you leave no stones unturned. Next. So hybrid business models definitely has benefits, right? If nothing at all, you get the satisfaction from the impact that you are able to make. it also has huge benefits for brand equity. A number of the B Corp companies that we highlighted are also a lot of what we call the young people's companies, right? Young people are increasingly rejecting the pure form of capitalism. Young people are saying, we don't want to do business at all costs, and we don't want to support businesses that do business at all costs. We want to support businesses that care about people, care about the environment, and so forth. So building social impact into your models is a good way of building brand equity. It definitely is also a good way of attracting different types of capital, social capital, that you probably haven't attracted up to this point. It's also a good way of doing basic research, right? If you bring in partners to explore new areas or to explore new markets, it's a good way of doing research. It's a way of preparing immature markets. Moringa Connect and those companies that are supporting smallholder farmers, that's their way of building that market. And it's also a good way of providing market intermediation so that your business can go on well. So in closing, next slide, just want to note a few things that, can we go to the next slide? Hopefully there's a next slide. Right, so hybrid entrepreneurship is not just for impact, it's also good for business. Our current societal dispensation has moved away from caveat emptor. We're no longer in the business of let the buyer beware. We're in the business of looking out for the buyer, doing good whilst doing well. And if you're not thinking about this, you have to be careful because you might be left behind. Post-COVID, the private sector has to partner with the public sector. And so one thing you can do is to position yourself, think about your business model, think about areas in your business model where you can start to provide this kind of support at no cost or little cost to you. Or if it's expensive, find partners that will work with you in providing this kind of support to your customers, to employees, to other people in your value chain. And try as much as possible. And the other point to note is that even if you're not doing this as your new business model, try it temporarily. Take advantage of COVID, the impact of COVID, and try it temporarily. You might be surprised what you find. Try the single unifying strategy. It's going to be difficult, but really try to intentionally build social impact into your model, and don't let it be an afterthought. And then lastly, look at the B Corps for inspiration, because there's a lot of examples there. So I'm going to end there. Eben, if my sound is good, we can leave it here, or you can switch me back to my laptop.
Okay.
So I think I'm going to call Zara. Pardon?
I just wanted to, there are a few questions that have come in. The first one is, I want to know, for example, how a clothing or jewelry company can have a social impact.
Right. So it basically depends on where you're interested in. So if you're doing clothing and jewelry, I'm guessing that you are employing people to do this clothing and jewelry. So just like the hot bread basket, I think it was hot bread basket company, perhaps you can bring in an employment program where you train people to make this jewelry, and then you set them up, you support them to set up as independent jewelry maker entities that then supply you with jewelry. What you'll be doing is that your business will be intact, you will have variety of jewelry, and you would also be creating jobs. You know, there are also ways of bringing in using more safe materials, right, and projecting this to the customer, that there are so many jewelry options, but this jewelry option cares about you, right? It's not caveat emptor. It's not let the buyer beware what you're wearing, but we actually are being proactive in thinking about your safety and your health in choosing materials for this this jewelry. So I hope that gives you some ideas.
Gordon, could you please try to see if you could turn back your video now that we stopped the screen share? So there's a second question.
All right. So you have to take me, I think you've muted my other, okay, I see you now.
Perfect. So you'd have to mute one of the devices. So both, okay, perfect. So I would like to know.
Let's go to the second question. I'll turn the video on soon.
Sure. This is from Charlotte. What should be done if not all my stakeholders are benefiting and I can't afford to make all of them benefit?
I don't know if Zara can also. Eben, you have to give me access to the video.
Right. There you go. Can you try again?
So whilst that goes on, there's a question here that says, I would like to know with regards to link prosperity, what should be done if not all my stakeholders are benefiting and I can't afford to make all of them benefit at a go? So I think if some are benefiting, that's great. And one way to make more benefit is to bring in partners, right? So start to look at other entities, especially development agencies and other companies that are interested, that have an interest in your stakeholders, and do programs with them. What's important is that you build it in so that it's not at an extra cost, but it's part of what you do, you know. And yes, that's going to be difficult at first, but if you look at the business model canvas and you look at the different elements, you will start to see ideas for how you can bring in partners to provide support to some of those stakeholders in your value chain.
Great. Dr. Gordon, we have some other questions for you as well.
Your mic is muted.
Can you hear me? My mic should be on.
Yeah, we can
Hello?
hear you.
Okay, great. All right, Dr. Gordon, we have a few other questions for you. One question is, how different is a socially responsible business from a social enterprise?
Okay, I see what's going on. Sorry, hold on a second.
I think Gordon is on mute, so he's just fixing that.
Okay. While Dr. Gordon gets in, we had another question that was directed, I think, more towards me. People wanted to know about the steps to apply. So we will take everyone through those steps. We'll have a video coming up shortly. We'll first go through some of the questions that people have for Dr. Gordon, and then we'll share with all of you how you also can apply and become a ANPI Africa Business Hero. So please do stay with us, and we'll share those steps later on. Dr. Gordon, are you back?
Yes, I'm back, yes.
Okay, great. So yes, the question was, how different is a socially responsible business from a social enterprise?
So I think a socially responsible business, I think you can think of it as one that has built, it makes sure it doesn't go as far as identifying very strong social impact markets, but it makes sure that whatever it does, it is providing what will benefit society, right? So you can say that a socially responsible business is one that uses safe materials in production. It's one that goes a little bit further to provide more support for their employees beyond just pay and bonus and so forth. It's one that perhaps does education. So it's not a social enterprise, but it is intentional about providing some social benefits as part of its business. It's regular business.
Got it. Very helpful. We have another one from Harry. It says, in as much as jobs are going to be lost during COVID-19, what forms of entrepreneurial ventures will emerge post-COVID-19, and how can we be better prepared to maximize the challenge for good?
So Zara, I think this one is for you and I.
Sure.
So I think we're seeing changes in consumer behavior. There was an article, I think it was a Harvard Business Review article that talked about how Africa is seeing a boom in e-commerce, and essentially digital work, right? So if you think about it, if you were not online up to this point, now you are realizing that you need to be online, right? If you're not active online, you're looking at it, you're saying, it looks like there's something missing here. So I think we're going to see a lot of entrepreneurs provide services that intersect with digital commerce. And I said this one is for Zara and I, because I think this is also at the center of what the ANPI program is about. So Zara.
Exactly. So yes, I would be happy to share some insights. So you featured JPalm, which was one of the winners of our competition last year, run by Mahmoud Johnson. And I think he's a perfect example. So JPalm has always been a social enterprise. They leverage their business to create jobs for farmers in Liberia. They produce a range of skincare products. And so are also able to increase local production. But importantly, what we've seen is during this time, although it's a company that mainly has been in the production manufacturing industry, he's pivoting online. And so they're doing a lot of e-commerce sales. They're doing a lot of e-logistics, so delivery to their clients. They are facilitating the purchase of their products online. And I think that is a good example to that highlights some of what you were sharing. Even for companies that were primarily offline before, in order to survive COVID-19 and to really take on what will become the new normal, businesses, I think, will increasingly need to gravitate online. And in many ways, it speaks to what we mean by Netpreneur. A lot of people get confused by that and assume that the prize is just for companies that are tech-based. And that is not accurate. But what we do believe is that in the 21st century and beyond, entrepreneurs that thrive are going to be entrepreneurs that are connected to the internet. So you can be a shoe manufacturer. And in fact, one of our 2019 finalists last year is, but you will engage with the internet, whether it means you're using Instagram Live, for example, as Kevin of Uzuri has been doing, to sell your products or to engage with your customers, you will connect to the internet. So Harry, I think the answer to your question is that going forward, the businesses that we'll see emerging and really thriving are going to be those that find a way to both address the needs of customers, like Dr. Gordon shared, and also importantly, leverage the new medium, which is really digital.
Right. Very well put.
Great. So let's see which other ones we have to answer before we go with the steps. Even are there any that jump out to you as I was speaking?
There was one about property maintenance that I wanted to maybe link to another one about hotel business. So it will be interesting to know how a property maintenance business can make social impact by helping small hotels figure out what to do with their properties. Because if I think about it, a property management company would probably have a blueprint in how to manage your properties, right? If it's into real estate, let's say housing and so forth. What can small hotel managers learn from this? Can this property management company then provide this blueprint as a training material to say, here are the different ways in which you can think of new business models? You know, what kind of partnerships can you come up with? I mean, we're seeing the government partner with hotels to create isolation centers for people who are recovering from COVID-19 and so forth. So there are new business models here. Yes, a lot of hotels might not make it and will have to find new ways of engaging people. I mean, if you think about it, even when COVID-19 is restricted, is contained, social distancing is probably not going to go away for a long time, right? So when you go to those conferences, you still probably need to sit apart, right? So it becomes a question of how do hotels take advantage of this and provide spaces where people can sit apart. You know, those are examples, and work with partners really to provide new models. You know, ones that include food, does not include food, and so forth, so that they can keep operational.
Great. We have another one that I think is worthwhile to look at. It says, at what point do you think you achieve unification in your business, and how do you measure that? Is it by the social impact or the profit that it has been made?
I think it's by both, right? So I want to point you to the BCorp assessment list. So you can actually take a test on the BCorp website about your, if you will, how well you do on the list of the assessment criteria, right? And I think the BCorp companies are ones that have found this unification, if you will. So that is a really good list that you can use to test the extent to which you would have arrived, if that's helpful.
Yeah, and
there's one about legal implications in terms of registration that I wanted to touch on very quickly. So the question is, what are the legal implications of hybrid business model with respect to registration? I think the US, and I have to double check on the UK, but the US allows you to register as a B Corp. In many countries, it doesn't exist, right? In Ghana, for instance, you can't even register as a social enterprise in Ghana, which you can do in the US as a 501c3. So it's about the model more than the legal registration, right? Because at the end of the day, your customers, your partners, your investors are going to see that even though you are registered as a for-profit business, you have a strong interest in supporting society. And you have built this into your model as part of what you do. It's going to be very visible to them. So I think the idea is to focus more on your model than to focus on registration until we get to the point where our registration systems start to evolve and start to incorporate these new age, if you will, new school registration types.
Great. Dr. Gordon, I also wanted to speak a little bit to the other question around how do you measure both, because it's a question that we get often around what we look for in terms of our entrepreneurs, whether we're looking for social impact or just profit. And for ANPI, you'll see that we don't place strong emphasis on how profitable the business is. We care that you're financially sound and so you're making revenue, but social impact is really important. And so for us, success is certainly the ability to impact companies in a successful way and in a way that is financially sustainable.
Okay. Are there?
I think maybe we can take one more question before we go over the steps on how to apply, as that was a question that we received earlier.
Okay.
So Dr. Gordon, up to you. You can choose the last one.
So there's one about what are tips to approach private corporations for partnership to enhance social impact activities. I think a good way to think about it is to think about private entities that also have an interest in your customer base. So if you say, I'm just gonna use one off the top of my head, you provide education, and let's say it's university education, which I'm familiar with, then very quickly you know that real estate companies are interested in housing, right? You know that internet companies are interested in data. You know, there's so many companies that you can sort of identify. So it becomes a question of how you find the struggling ones to support, or the startups in that space that will otherwise not be able to have these opportunities, right? And to be able to support them so that they can also keep in business, you know? So I think that's one way to look at it. And of course, if you look at your value chain, if you look at your suppliers and your distributors and so forth, there are opportunities there as well. Any people group, any stakeholder you pick, you will find other companies that intersect with them. And it's really the question of finding the ones that your partnership will support them, right? Or if you are the one struggling, then finding the ones that will be more likely to support you so that you can provide a service to them. And then your pitch will basically be about how maybe what you bring to the table, that would also be of benefit to the larger company.
Okay, thank you. I hope everyone had most of their questions answered. I think in the interest of time, we'll also answer the question around how to apply, as I know people had, someone asked during the presentation. So even if you could play the video now, if possible. Thank you so much, Dr. Gordon.
You're welcome. It was great.
Yes.
We see you, African entrepreneur, and now the world needs to see you too. Are you ready to be a 2020 ANPI Africa's Business Hero? Are you an African entrepreneur? Is your business at least 3 years old? Are you ready to pitch your business to legends and tell your story? If you said yes to all these questions, it's your turn to apply now. Follow these 5 quick, easy steps to start your journey to becoming an ANPI Business Hero. Step 1. Set up an account. Fill in your details. Click register and you are 1 step in. Step 2. Read the guidelines carefully. Just visit africabusinessheroes.org and click on Application Guide. Step 3. The criteria for eligibility. Simple. Each applicant should be a founder or co-founder of the company. The applicant has African citizenship or is a direct descendant of an African citizen. Your company has to be registered, headquartered, and operated in an African country. Your company should be at its post-idea stage. Your business should be 3 years old or more and has at least 3 years of revenue history. Step 4. Get a reference. It could be your mentor, colleague, teacher, or advisor. And finally, step 5. Submit your application. Your application includes these 5 sections: founder profile, business profile, business deep dive, awards and recognition, and a video introduction. If you get stuck at any point, don't worry. Visit our application guide and frequently asked questions for help, or send an email to info@africabusinessheroes.org. Now, it's your turn to become a 2020 ANPI Business Hero and win a share of $1.5 million, admission into the Alibaba eFounders Fellowship, access to mentorship and training, and a chance to tell your story to Africa and the world. Apply now.
Okay. Hopefully have how to apply. I know we had someone from Zimbabwe who had a question. So if anyone has any other questions on the application itself, please do use the Q&A and we'll try to answer it in the time that we have left. But overall, I hope from both the video that you saw earlier and this, you have a good sense of what we're looking for in our entrepreneurs. Dr. Gordon highlighted one of them, Bamboo. In general, we really are looking for hybrid entrepreneurs. We're looking for individuals creating impact in their community, and we have tried to provide a range of ways to support them once they become finalists, both monetary. And so, as you saw from the video, our finalists, our top 10 finalists, have the opportunity to win up to up to 300,000. They win a share of $1.5 million. They also gain access to the Alibaba eFounders Fellowship program, where they will be able to really do a deep dive on the digital economy. Dr. Gordon shared with us earlier the importance of going digital, and so our finalists will have the chance to visit Alibaba in Hangzhou and learn about the digital economy from the Chinese perspective, Alibaba's experience, and learn how to pivot online. And also finalists will have access to networks and mentorship. And so we encourage you all to apply. You can visit africabusinessheroes.org to gain more details. And I see now that we have some questions about it, so I will quickly try to answer them. There's a question around 3 years of revenue and whether this is a strict criteria. Yes, it is. We want businesses to have shown that they are financially sustainable. It does not have to be 3 years of consecutive revenue, but we do wish that throughout your period of existence, you have made revenue for at least 3 times. And it is very important that the business is registered in Africa and operated here in Africa. It's a prize for African entrepreneurs who are working and operating on the continent. And one other question was, do I need to submit my application before my reference gets contacted? No, you can ask for your reference to begin their testimonial process before you finalize your application. So hopefully that answers most of the questions. Someone asked, what's the minimum and maximum amount one can apply? You can apply as many times. It's a 10-year long initiative. So if you're not successful this year, you can definitely apply again in following years. Okay, I have 2 other questions. Someone says, I've submitted my application today. When can I get feedback since the closing date is 9th of June? First of all, congratulations, Tabang, for submitting your application. You will get feedback after the 9th of June. We will begin our round 1 review process as soon as applications close, and we will notify all those who become our top 50 by the end of June. So stay put. You will have a little while to go, but we encourage you to attend the rest of the webinar series. We have one coming up tomorrow. And so in the meantime, there'll be many opportunities for you to still gain access to learning resources. And we have one here that says, can my reference be part of your team? You can have, your reference should be somebody who knows you, a mentor, a professor, it could be an employee, it could be a co-founder. And so it's important that whoever is referring you definitely knows you and can attest to who you are. Then I think the last question is, can one apply and access ANPI resources in French? And this is a good question. It's an important one. This year, we actually launched our application in French. And so you can apply in French. You can access the website in French. We have a French webinar tomorrow as well. So I encourage you to go on our website and you can gain all the details you need there. Thank you, Ardis. Okay, I think those are all the questions we have for now. So even why don't I turn it to you? Dr. Gordon, are you still on?
Yes, I am. I am here.
Do you want to end with any final thoughts on the topic before we wrap up?
I think I really hope that people will start thinking about this concept of social impact very carefully, because I think that more and more, like I started with, we are moving away from that old model of career center, and in this particular COVID-19 situation where the world is literally going to not look like what it used to look like, there would definitely be the need for more sensitivity to social issues. And good businesses, more successful businesses are going to be the ones that are seen as being empathetic and responsive to how we rebuild. So it's definitely something people need to look at. People should look at this pandemic as a jumping off point or a motivation to start thinking about social impact.
Great. Thank you so much, Dr. Gordon. Thank you so much. And I think final words from my side is really, like Dr. Gordon said, in going forward now and in the future, social impact businesses are truly the way forward. They provide value to the communities. They are a bridge between profits and impact. And so highly encourage you all to both learn more about these models and also to refer to some of the examples from last year. Many of our finalists last year are exactly the hybrid entrepreneur that Dr. Gordon has been speaking about. And we encourage you all to apply and hope to see you on our future webinars. Definitely stay tuned. We'll be sending out information to all of you who are on the call, and there'll be many more coming up.